On Gurudev's instructions and by his mercy, we'll continue today studying the verse 1 of Manah Siksha, the lessons for the mind by Raghunath Das Goswami, in the commentary by Anantadas Babaji. And as you know, many other commentaries that Babaji calls upon and cites to enrich his own commentary. We're on our fourth lesson with Manah Siksha and just about finishing the long commentary of verse 1. And we've been dwelling on what it means to instruct the mind and dwelling on the sweetness with which Raghunath Das Goswami addresses his own mind. And we've been all along resisting this idea that we sometimes have, particularly in mundane meditation practices, that the mind is somehow our enemy, not our friend. The mind is somehow evil, and not realizing that the mind can take us many places where we need to go in order to find the soul, to develop the heart. That the mind can direct us and set us on the right path. The ultimate goal is to completely realize our souls, our soul consciousness, our soul identity. But all along this way, the mind is a friend. This is Raghunath Das's message, and in particular in this first verse, which was essentially a list, you might remember, of the things that Raghunath instructs his mind to love and to cherish, and to be devoted to. All on the idea that by increasing attention through the mind to these 7 things, we'll come back to them in a minute, that we can increase, that the love in them, in our hearts towards them, will also increase. So the mind and soul are connected in a very mysterious way. The mind is subtle energy, and the soul is internal energy. Only the soul is eternal. The mind is not eternal. The mind will disappear with the body at the end of life, and a new mind will appear with a new body in the following life. And all the intellectual memories, all the intellectual thoughts and ideas we once had, these will all disappear as well, but the spiritual impressions of our lives will remain. The mind does not feel, and the soul does not think. The mind can be directed. We can tell our mind, think about that apple, or think about my job. The soul does not need to be directed. The soul is everywhere. The soul needs no directions. It feels its feelings. It feels a variety of feelings, a variety of moods and emotions that are described in Bhakti literature. They come and go. They're strong and weak, intense and quick and slow and stable and moving. But they're all beyond direction. They need no direction. They're exactly where they should be in their natural constitutional form. So whereas the mind can direct us towards the soul, we can only become our soul by letting go of the mind and embracing feeling. And this final journey towards feeling comes through devotional practice of the kind that you know about through through association with like-minded devotees, through chanting, through sankirtan, through sharing, through reading, etc. So if the mind can lead us to the doorstep of the soul, the step to the soul must happen through mercy, and will only happen through mercy. It cannot be directed, it cannot be controlled, it cannot be asked for, it cannot be given. It will simply come when it comes. But the mind can help us to be ready, to put us in a good situation, so that an auspicious situation, so that when mercy is there, we are able to surrender completely to the soul. The mind cannot block the soul, the true nature of the soul. The mind can cause ignorance. The mind can cause darkness. It can cause us to misunderstand the soul. But the soul will always be free, will never be changed by the mind. And when consciousness of the mind and the consciousness of the soul is complete, when we fully understand who we are in our souls, then all the mind will dissolve. That consciousness won't be necessary anymore. When we fully realized our souls, we will be only souls. They'll happen at the same time. So nothing like this exists in material science. When we become the soul, the question of the soul disappears. We won't even wonder what a soul is anymore. We'll just be completely ourselves, surrendered and peaceful. The idea that somehow in a chemistry class in school we could do an experiment mixing water and, what do I know, nitrogen. And when the experiment is done, we become the water and nitrogen. This was foolishness. But in our experiment in Bhakti, the goal of our research is to become the thing we're researching, our soul. I'll read again the verse 1, and then we'll continue the commentary from Babaji. Here's verse 1 from Manah Siksha. O mind, O brother, I hold your feet and I pray to you with flattering words. Always give up your pride and develop wonderful love for, and now comes the list, for your spiritual master, for the abode of Raj, for the people of Raj, for the saintly devotees, for the brahmanas, for my initiation mantra, for the holy name of Krishna, and for the shelter of the eternally youthful couple of Raj, Shri Shri Radha Krishna. So this is the first and most sweet and most important request of Raghunath till his mind. His mind, which he respects, he says, I pray to you, I hold your feet. This is the sign of great respect. And I pray to you, please, love these things. Love these beautiful parts of our bhakti practice. All 7 of them are important parts of our practice. So Raghunath is telling us, if we use our minds to love these things, then we will advance in our spiritual path. What were the 7 things again? The Guru, the spiritual master. And we had wonderful Guru Purnimat yesterday and celebrated exactly that. So it's very auspicious that we should read this again today. Of Raj, we should lose pride and love other devotees, which we do by being together here, among other things. Brahmanas, so the great wise priests of the tradition, for the mantra, for the mantra itself, for the words. We should love this. We'll come back to that today. For the holy name, also a word and a sound which we are asked to love and give devotion to. And finally, and most importantly, for the loving couple. And then in the last two times, we had spoken about what it means to love Guru, for the mind to love Guru. We spoke about what it means for the mind to love Raj, and the Vrajvasis, the devotees. We're talking about that. And then we ended on this very special point that Babaji made, that what is unique about Brajvasis, the good souls of Braj, is that they're both material and spiritual at the same time. Of all the jivas in the world, all the souls in the world, the ones in Braj are special because they're completely spiritual and completely material at the same time. So that you can be sure when you walk down a path at night in Vrindavan and you meet a barking dog, that this dog is actually an incarnation of Radha Mohan and you have nothing to fear. This is the wonder of Vrindavan. Then we talked a bit about what that means to transcend, to be in the material world and in the spiritual world. And in that subject, then Babaji had said something which gave us great hope, is that one of the beautiful qualities of the mind is that it permits us to imagine transcendence, to have visions of the spiritual world, to have visions of the pastimes, to dream about and see in our minds beautiful pastimes that we read about in the books we love so much, like Vilapa Kusmanjali that we're reading in the morning class. And in Vilapa Kusmanjali, of course, it's also Raghunath Das Goswami who's the author. So he's the author of that book, and he's the author of this book, this very small book. And what we see again and again is Raghunath Das Goswami having visions. And then the visions becoming so strong that he is even there in the spiritual world. And then the vision fades away and he becomes materially consciousness. So he goes from deep, deep material consciousness, ordinary material consciousness, to deep, deep spiritual consciousness. And this is not through magic of the soul alone, it's also with the help of the mind. When we talk about visions, and when we talk about meditations, and when we talk about dreams, these are happening in the mind. So a very beautiful point that Babaji made for us last week was that the mind is able to show us transcendence. We are able to see that in our mind before we are fully in our Svarup. And this is wonderful because this gives us more desire to be there, to evolve, and to become fully spiritual. It gives us more hope too. So all devotees, no exception, any devotee, even the greatest acharyas and sadhus that are walking on the earth, are material beings in high level of spiritual consciousness or lower level of spiritual consciousness. And part of their experience, all of these devotees, is mental. And so Babaji had said, and I'll stop on this point then, he had said, the Lord's mercy is the saint's mercy, the sadhu's mercy. So the sadhus are having very strong visions and spending lots of time in spiritual consciousness, are very clearly aware of their souls, are very, very close to Svarup, to the point that when they leave their bodies, they will pass immediately into the spiritual plane. And being close to these, we can also have visions. We can also see clearly. We can use their experiences as vehicles to increase our experiences. So we depend on these sadhus. We depend on other devotees. And that was a reminder that mercy that comes from them is in a chain. That's the mercy we receive from Gurudev, for example, is only the mercy that he has received from his Gurudev and from his Gurudev, and so on and so forth. Mercy gives mercy. And that's the meaning of Guru Parampara. So all these elements fit together very nicely, that the mind will give us a peek, a little look into the visions of the spiritual consciousness. And these are increased by association with those who have had that kind of experience. Because this shows us the way, increases our consciousness, and it helps us also to recognize our own visions. Sometimes we have visions in our meditation or in our sleep that we don't understand, and we need to ask Gurudev, what does that mean? And if we didn't have Gurudev or the sadhus around us to answer these questions, then we wouldn't know if we were coming closer to our spiritual consciousness. So now we continue with the commentary by Babaji. And in a way, he wants to now sum up, or we ended on this commentary last time, we'll repeat it. In a way, Babaji wanted to sum up all these ideas about Radvasis being both material and spiritual at the same time, and Braj being also material and spiritual at the same time, and Guru. So these first 3 points that we want to love into our mind, he wanted to explain that in a way, and he said something so very beautiful that it's good to repeat it. And here's what he said, Babaji. This is because the Lord desires the devotee even more than himself. The Lord desires the devotee even more than himself. The Lord wants our love more than he wants the love of himself. He's more, and then Babaji continues, he's more attracted to the bliss of his devotee's devotion in the heart than to his own Svarupananda. That is the bliss that he feels in his heart. And he desires to relish that bliss more. So this is an idea that's unheard of in any other spiritual practice. That what pleases the Lord most is when we are blissfully in our souls, when we are achieving soul consciousness. The more we come close to our Swarup, to our spiritual form, our spiritual body, the more bliss Krishna feels. So it's not by veneration and worship of God that he becomes happy. It's by us becoming divine in ourselves, by us discovering our own divinity, by us discovering our own Swarup, our own soul identity. This is what causes pleasure for God. Not worshipping of his beauty or his greatness. And this is also the very meaning of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's humility. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was Krishna who appeared. And particularly in the first half of his life, he was utterly humble. He was extremely intelligent and a scholar and a teacher, but in every outward form, he took the shape of a devotee to Krishna, which we said before partly explains his very complicated emotions, because he was Krishna and a devotee of Krishna at the same time. And then after he took sannyas at the age of around 24, then this evolved into his experience of being Radha and Mohan at the same time, remaining Krishna, but in the mood and feelings and spirit and position of Radha. So for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this idea of humility is absolutely central. And the idea of devotion that he teaches us is to be as little as possible. Not to be fantastic devotees, not to be the most wonderful and noisy and big and knowing everything devotees. We all know some of these, but to be the smallest, most humble devotees. That's the ideal devotee for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So devotion comes from believing that we are the lowest of all. And you remember the third of the Shri Shikshastakam from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that we should think ourselves lower than a blade of grass. This is what causes love of devotees, his love for devotees, but also that kind of humility completely liberates our own hearts so that we can give love to God in the maximum. So I think that's where we left things last time, and then we continue on this, in the commentary on this theme of devotion. And for the younger devotees in the class, in the group, devotion is the center of bhakti. Bhakti means the practice of loving devotion. We all understand more or less what love is, but devotion is something more than love. And that is to understand. That is to meditate on. Why don't we just say bhakti is love? And we can all bring out that feeling of love that we sometimes have and point it towards God. Why devotion? What is the difference between love and devotion? Devotion is a combination of two things. Devotion is the feeling of love, this feeling that there's something called love, and acting on love. Devotion is love plus action. Devotion is understanding that doing something happens in love. Devotion is understanding that when I'm making a cup of coffee for my wife, it's impossible to do that without a little bit of love being there. Only a mechanical coffee machine can make coffee for my wife without the love being there. But the moment I use my hands and I pour out the coffee and I put the water on the kettle and then I make the coffee, putting the energy of my body through my hands, making the coffee, the right strength, not too strong. She doesn't want it too weak. A little bit of milk, and give it to her. This is the realization of devotion on a very tiny human scale, of course, but nonetheless. It's not the idea that we have love and so we should act. It's not love plus action. Devotion is not love plus action. Devotion is love as action. It's the understanding that jivas act in love, that all action is love. The challenge in this idea is not doing something different with your love. It's not making the coffee with more love, or it's not making the coffee with more action. Devotion means realizing the love that's in our human actions, realizing that a jiva is a thing that acts through love. So bhakti is a practice which leads us to this realization that action is love. So when Gurudev says love and action, he doesn't mean, well, whatever we're doing, just please add a little bit of love there, and then it'll be love and action. No, it means understanding that action itself is love. It's energized by love, it's carrying love, and it's carried by love. This is what bhakti means. And it's a very special realization. And in our practice, it means looking, reflecting on everything we do and understanding what love is there. What love is energizing that action, what love is carrying that action, what love is giving meaning to that action. So now Babaji comments and says, on the pretext of teaching his own mind, Shri Raghunath Das teaches all the devotees that the flawless way to attain love for the lotus feet of the Lord is to serve the pure devotees with love. So the flawless way, the perfect way to attain love for the lotus feet of the Lord is to serve the pure devotees with love. So doing devotional service for God happens by doing devotional service for devotees, pure devotees. In other words, bhakti is a practice that happens on the everyday level, that happens in relation to other devotees. God is pleased when we give our devotion to other devotees. It's that simple. So again, it's not an idea of a far away God that demands worship for his happiness. The love of the universe flows through every soul. The devotion of the universe flows through every soul. And when we serve others with devotion, our guru, our husband, our children, our boss, we are pleasing Krishna. Because the aim is bhakti, the aim is devotion. And devotion flows whenever there's a heart and whenever there is action. So everything we do, we need to reflect and meditate on the love that makes it possible. And when we come to the point of realizing that that cup of coffee I make for my wife is nothing but love, it's all love, then we've come to the highest level of spiritual realization. When we look around us, like Gurudev does, We look around us and we see everything in the world in terms of love. There's nothing else. That happens because of love. That is color blue because of love. That is moving quickly because of love. This is what realization looks like, feels like. So bhakti is really a revolution in this way. It gives us two brand new ideas. I kind of make a summary now of what I just said. Bhakti has two brand new spiritual ideas. The one is about love, what love is, and the other is about God, what God is. So I already explained the first one. The bhakti idea is that love is devotion, love is serving, love is doing for another soul, doing in relation to another soul. It means understanding that you're never acting alone. Everything comes from your soul, and your soul is meaningless unless there's another soul. This could be your husband or your child, or it could be the neighbor, or it could be your tuk-tuk driver. It could be many things, but there's always another soul, and your love is always evolving in relation to the other. Again, it's not, we don't do devotion in order to do service alone, and we don't do devotion just because we feel love for some person. We do devotion because we want to realize that all action is loving. And this means that, of course, service, seva, can never be required. It can never be a law. It has to be, in its best form, spontaneous. It has to grow out of our connections. It has to grow out of our feelings. So when I make the coffee because the policeman told me to make the coffee, then this is difficult to call devotion. So the love and the action, again, they're not added together, they come together. They appear at the same time. The desire to do devotion never comes from outside. Sorry, the desire to do service never comes from outside. It always comes from somewhere in the heart. So in that way, bhakti is giving us a new definition of love. But wait a minute, bhakti is also giving us a second new idea, and that's a new idea of God. We already said that Krishna is pleased when there is devotion to other devotees. So this means that God is, what God is shaped, formed by devotion. The highest thing for God is the devotion of his devotees. The devotion to each other, devotion to him, but definitely not worship of him. And the Babaji had commented that the devotion is even greater than God. And this will mean, later on we'll come back to this, but it's an idea that we often talk about, that the love that Radha feels for Mohan in the Vrindavan Leela is even greater than she is and greater than he is. So you have God and you have the God in the mood of Radha, but the love they feel is higher than both. So this too is a very new and very different idea of what God is. Okay, now we've arrived at the fourth item on Raghunath Das's list of the things that the mind should develop love for. There were 7. The fourth one is the Brahmanas. And by this means the priestly class, the historical priestly class in traditional Vedic society, let's say. The ones that have all the practical knowledge about how to do rituals, to religious duties, and how to chant correctly, and how to do puja correctly, and the ones that remember all the Vedic hymns and they remember all the Vedic rituals. So the verse, Babaji says, after this, Sri Raghunath instructs his mind to love the Brahmanas with apurva rati. The rati means passionate love, apurva means the greatest. So love them with the greatest passionate love that you have. But this is a riddle for us, a question. Because maybe you remember, we often speak about the difference between Raganuga Bhakti, spontaneous bhakti, spontaneous devotion, and Vaidhi Bhakti, which is devotion based on rules and regulations and instructions and authority. So the Brahmans, or the Brahmanas, the Brahmins, they represent this authority. Sorry, somebody's drilling a hole in my roof. So the Brahmins represent this authority that is not devotional. And so it makes us remember this idea that the ideal for us is not Vaidhi Bhakti or Bhakti based on authority, but Raganuga Bhakti, Bhakti based on spontaneous feeling. So it's very interesting now that Raghunath Das Goswami is going to say, but we should love the Brahmins as well. And he'll explain why now. The start of the answer is remembering that we also need the Brahmins. We also need the Vaidhi Bhakti in order to be Raganuga Bhaktas. If we go to temple and the pujari does all the rituals upside down and wrong and in the wrong order, and we sing all the chants backwards, then we will not find the way to our Raganuga practice. I'll just wait a minute. I'm sorry, everybody. Somebody's drilling a hole right on top of my head here. It's all I can hear. So, Babaji comments. now about this, the Brahmins. He says, by devotion to Brahman, one awakens the grace of the Lord, who is called Brahmanya. In other words, Brahmanya Deva, so the Lord of the Brahmas. The Lord is Lord of the devotees, yes, but he's also Lord of this class of priests, the traditional priests who carry with them the knowledge, the dry knowledge and memory of the institution. And this too we must have. So he gives some examples of the use of the term Brahmas in the Shastras to show that in order to fully integrate these traditions in Raganuga Bhakti, we must also have love for the Brahmins. So he says, he cites the Vishnu Smriti, a very ancient text, Vedic text, which says, one should not look at a non-devotee Brahmin. He is just like a dog eater. So this is in the Vedas somewhere. But Babaji says, this is only to attract a non-devotee Brahmin to devotion. So he says, in other words, the Vedas speak this way so that non-devotees can be attracted to the practices. And if we just begin with pure devotional speaking, then non-devotees will be alienated, be pushed away. The ones who have not had the virtue, the mercy of contact with devotees. So Babaji continues, such statements are not intended to blaspheme Brahmans, so not intended to insult them, for Lord Krishna himself gives instructions in Vipra Bhakti, so the devotion to Vipras, to Brahmins. He cites Bhagavatam, where it says in Canto 10, O my kinsman, do not harm a Brahmin, even if he offends you, even if he assaults you or abuses you, you must always bow down to him. So Babaji is trying to explain that devotional service has a role in relation to souls who do not do devotional service. And then comes a long verse by Vishwanatha Chakravartipad, not an associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but someone from a generation or two afterwards, where he talks about 5 levels of Raganuga sadhana. 5 levels with people, associates with 5 different levels of devotional, let's say, consciousness. And so he's showing that there are actually different ways we can relate to different kinds of people in different kinds of devotional consciousness, different intensities, different levels, with different results, different effects. So the first he calls Svabhista Bhavamaya, so practice that is is full of the desired mood. So it's very favorable to bhakti, very favorable to the mood of bhakti, to the bhavamaya. It's a sentiment that bhaktas like us, practitioners, try to increase and cultivate and deepen in their relationship with God. Then the second category from Chakravartipad is Svabhista Bhava Sambandhi. So it's the kind of mood you would have towards someone you just have a relation to. Then there's Svabhista Bhavanukula, practice that is strengthening the practice, a practice that's strengthening the mood. Then there's Svabhista Bhava Viruddha, which is practice that is not strengthening the mood, which is against the mood. And then finally, Swabhista Bhava Viruddha, practice that is absolutely opposed to the mood we're trying to get. Okay, it's all very technical and not so interesting for us, but the point is, now here comes Babaji and says, of the five, these five practices, the practice that is not unfavorable to the desired mood, contains items like honoring the cows, the Brahmins, and the banyan trees. So he quotes Chakravartipad to show why there is a place for all different types of relations. That we can have devotional mood with an atheist, that we can have devotional mood with someone who's never heard of Krishna, that we can have devotional mood with someone who has great spiritual consciousness and very low spiritual consciousness, that there's a level for every kind of mood we might meet. All these practices, he says, Babaji, can be beneficial to the practice of Raganuga Bhajan. Different feelings, different levels. And it brings us back, at least in my imagination, it brings us back to the question of what feelings are and how they relate to thoughts. Back maybe to the beginning where we talk about what mind is and what heart is, what mind is and what soul is. In bhakti literature, we often talk about what feelings we'd like to have. And much of the literature, like the works of Rupa Goswami, tell us about the different stages of bhakti in terms of what feeling we have. So you would say, if you have this kind of feeling, then you're at that level. If you have a different kind of feeling, then you're at a different kind of level. And it all becomes a bit complicated and technical. So we're often trying to describe feelings in our practice. And we're good at describing in science and philosophy. We're good at describing facts and equations and phenomena that we observe in the world. But it's more complicated to describe feelings. And this may be the crucial difference between a thought and a feeling. For us, feelings are everything. And we're slightly skeptical about thoughts, about logic, about science and explanation. One difference we can think of is that we can cause thoughts. I can tell you, think of a large blue bird, and a large blue bird will appear in your mind. I can cause you to think about something, but I cannot cause you to feel a feeling. I cannot cause you to feel a specific feeling. I can cause you to feel, I suppose, but I cannot make you feel a particular feeling, because this depends on your own heart, your own soul, where your own spiritual orientation is. So to one person, I could recite a very nice love poem. To another person, I could recite the same poem and the feelings would be different. So in bhakti, feelings are supreme. They're the most important because they follow from the uniqueness of the individual soul, the uniqueness of the jiva. Every soul is part and parcel of the divine soul, and yet every soul, every single one of you has a different and unique soul, which has always been the same soul, which will always be the same soul, and always have that same identity. This is why we talk about your svarup as being your spiritual identity. Thoughts are material. Feelings are transcendental. Feelings, transcendental means They go beyond the material. They come and go from your soul. Thoughts are intellectual, and feelings are divine. This is why we talk so much about feelings in our practice, and this is why we give so much value to feelings as well. Okay, now we come to the fifth item on the list, on Raghunath Das Goswami's list of things the mind should develop love for. And the fifth item is the mantra. We should develop love for our mantra. And now to discuss this, Babaji cites again Chakravarti, Vishwanatha Chakravarti. And he says, after this, Shripad Vishwanath Chakravarti declares his wonderful love for his own initiation mantra. But first, Babaji will explain what a mantra is. He says, and he explains what a mantra is, like he often does, by citing somebody else. So he quotes here the Brahma Purana, where there's a very nice definition, very rich definition of what a mantra is. Here's the definition. A mantra is given by the Lord and the great sages. It starts with an evocatory syllable like Om, and it ends with a sign of obeisance, which is decorated with bijas, with root syllables such as Namaha or Swaha. Namaha means respect to, and Swaha means honors to. And of course, in our Diksha mantra, they begin with Sring and Kling, and this is the invocatory syllable, the opening syllable. And then there's a sign of obeisance, I give my respect, and then there's a request for something, which ends with Namaha and Swaha. It goes on now, the quotation. Furthermore, the mantra contains the names of the Lord and the special power to establish a certain relationship between the practitioner and the Lord. It blesses the practitioner in freeing him or her from the bondage of physical life and bestows a spiritual body which is suitable for serving the Lord. So nice, huh? So such a nice, it's from Brahman Purana, Gurudev. We must look closer one day. So it starts out by explaining what kind of words a mantra has. It has this opening word, maybe it's Kling or Sring or Om. Then it has a sign of obeisance, I give my respects. And then it has some root syllables like Namaha and Swaha, which say, I honor you, I respect you. So that's the structure. And then, the quote says, it always contains the name of the Lord, and it contains something which gives a connection between the one who's speaking the mantra and the Lord. I quote again the verse. It contains the name of the Lord and the special power to establish a certain relationship between the practitioner and the Lord. So it gives a relation, it creates a relation, which is the heart of bhakti. Every mantra has this power to create the connection between the one speaking and the one hearing, so to speak, between the divine ears of the Lord, the divine lips of the devotee, the practitioner. And then finally, the third part of a mantra, it blesses the practitioner. You are blessed by saying this, and you are freed from the bondage of physical life because it gives a spiritual body. It gives a siddhadeha. which is suitable for serving the Lord. Babaji comments on this. As the mantra diksha emanates from the mouth of the Satguru, the enlightened, purified Guru, a special divine mantra power is then infused into the heart of the aspirant devotee, which gives him the ability to do bhajan. So all that power that was just described by the Purana, that definition of the mantra, the power to establish connection between God and the practitioner, and the power to give a spiritual body to the practitioner, this comes through the mouth of the Guru when he speaks the mantra to you the first time. And from that point on, this mantra power lies in your heart, the heart of the aspirant. And this is what lets you do bhajan. This is what gives meaning to every time you chant. Every bead that crosses across your fingers is given meaning by this moment. And when this happens with your Satguru whispering in your ear, you're connected to that whole tradition of one Guru giving the mantra to the next, and so on and so forth. What's remarkable is that this is all about energy. It's power that's being passed. It's empowering your soul. You already had a soul, but in a way it needed to have the battery cables plugged in to be charged up and gotten ready. And the mantra is what energizes your soul and makes it ready for bhajan. Now you're ready. Now you have the energy. Now you're independent in that certain way to do your bhajan. You're ready to do service. Before you could do service like a robot, like the coffee machine. But now the service you do will be divine service, because this energy that's passed from all the way back to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, came through the parampara, has now passed into your ear, whispered gently, quietly into your ear, and the energy lies in you now. Now Babaji cites, he's going to quote Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya Lila, and he tells what happens to the devotee when initiation mantra comes. Here's what this is Krishna Das Kaviraj. At the time of initiation, the devotee surrenders himself. And at that time, Krishna makes him equal to himself, giving him a transcendental body in which the devotee can worship his lotus feet. When the initiation comes and the devotee surrenders, the devotee becomes an equal of God. Because the devotee then has the siddhadeha, transcendental body, that makes full devotion possible. It's quite remarkable, because surrender means you give everything up. And by giving everything up, you become everything. You have a transcendental body. You become an eternal devotee. The Svarup, is revealed to you through the spiritual master. Not given like something you might have in a gift at Christmas celebration. Here's your Svarup. No, what is given is the realization of the Svarup, or maybe we should say the possibility to realize the Svarup. And the guru, the spiritual master, realizes it himself by seeing you, by knowing you, by speaking with you. But once this is revealed to you and you realize it yourself, then you become a full part of the parampara, the tradition, the guru tradition. And that lets you, says Chaitanya Charitamrita, that lets you then worship fully. For me, it was a moment when it didn't change my consciousness, but it was a feeling of, well, I didn't know I knew how to play that in musical instrument. I never studied piano, but suddenly I sit down and I know how to play it. So this feeling was, I knew I had a soul. I was in soul consciousness in some way, but I did not know how to use my soul for bhajan. So it was like I was given a new set of abilities, spiritual abilities, to see and to hear and to think. Like I never went to bhajan school. Nobody ever taught me. But the moment my Svarup came, then I suddenly knew how to do it. How to practice, where to be, how to be devoted. So it wasn't like I was changed somehow. It was that something was like there was a big blanket over all of my spiritual abilities, and Guru took that blanket off and said, oh, you can use all these toys now too. You can use these abilities too, if you like. So it was like something revealed we already have, but we're not able to realize and understand until we have a certain level of spiritual progress or maturity. I continue with Babaji now. Of all the mantras, he says, which are discussed in the scriptures in connection with the initiation, the Shri Krishna mantra is most prominent. So he means Maha Mantra. But as you know, there are many other beautiful mantras that have different functions and different uses. But the Maha Mantra is the greatest because it contains in it the whole Vraj pastime, the whole energy and content and flavor of the Vraj pastime. And this is why we use it all the time and why it's so very important to us. It's a way of singing our reality. It's like singing praise to the world we know to be truth. And Babaji goes on and says, and again, of all these, the king of mantras is the 18-syllable or 10-syllable Gopi Jana Vallabha mantra, which contains all the pastimes within the Madhura Ras. It's the crown jewel of all mantras. So Gopi Jana Vallabha means the Krishna, the beloved of all the gopis. Babaji says the wonderful result of practicing this mantra will be experienced by someone who practices it with the greatest love and who learns its meaning from his initiating guru. Only a reader of Sanatana Goswami's Brihad Bhagavatamrita knows how the hero, Gopa Kumara, was able to travel through the entire spiritual sky by devoutly practicing this mantra, the Gopijana Vallabha. So Brihad Bhagavatamrita is a very important book by one of the six Goswamis, Sanatana. It means, Brihad means great, Bhagavatamrita means the nectar of Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No, I'm sorry, Bhagavatam, the nectar of Bhagavatam. So Brihad Bhagavatamrita means the great sweet nectar of Bhagavatam. And it's the story of a gopi, a cowherder, very sweet boy. And a sage comes to him and gives him a mantra. And he begins singing this mantra, and it permits him to travel all around the universe and learn all about the spiritual sky. And by telling that story, then we, the reader, are allowed to learn about all the spiritual sky. Very sweet. Now we turn to the fifth item that Raghunath Goswami wants us to learn to love, and that is the holy name. The mind must learn to love the holy name. Babaji says, then Sri Raghunathas prays for wonderful attachment to the holy name of Krishna. The chanting of the holy name by a devotee who is genuinely attached to the Lord brings all perfection. The chanting of the holy name is both the means and the goal of a devotee's life, for there's no difference between the name and the named. This is an idea that we've all heard many times, and it is very, very mysterious. What can it possibly mean to say that the name is God itself? And that when we're chanting the name, we're doing it in order to become closer to God, but we're already with God because it's in our mouth. This word, God's name, Hari, Hari, Krishna. And I'm afraid I don't have the explanation of this mystery for you today. Maybe tomorrow. But the name and the named, there is no difference. They're non-different. So when you utter the name Krishna with a full heart, when you utter the name Radha Mohan with a full, sincere heart, Radha and Mohan is there. Not, of course, I can tell you this much, not in a material sense, like the postman would come to your door and he would be there. When you say postman, no. When you, with a full, self-present, self-conscious, fully loving heart, utter the word Radha Mohan, then Radha Mohan is there spiritually. Maybe it's to say that when you utter the name Radha Mohan purely, like I'm describing, with purely in yourself, heart is purified, soul is purified, then there's nothing left in your soul but Radha Mohan. This is maybe what it means. But now Babaji will have some nice quotations from the Vedas to help explain things. Now he's going to quote the Padma Purana, which says the following: the holy name of Krishna is a Chintamani jewel, so a wish-fulfilling jewel, and is the very form of consciousness and transcendental flavor. It is completely pure and eternally liberated, and there is no difference between the name and the name. So maybe I was dreaming ahead of what the Puranas would say. That was a little bit about what I was trying to express to you. That when you're fully in your svarup, when you're fully in your soul, then your soul actually looks like the thing you're naming. When you are in full soul, there is nothing else but God. So when you utter the word God in your full soul consciousness, of course, it is God. Babaji says, Srila Jiva Goswami writes the following commentary to this verse, the one from the Puranas. He says, the holy name is like Chintamani, a touchstone which is able to bestow all which is desired. It is not just able to bestow everything because it is equal to the Lord, but it is Krishna himself who is endowed with the characteristics of Chaitanya, which means consciousness. This is the meaning of the non-difference between the name and the named. Okay, so let's go back. The holy name is the desire-giving gem. If you say the holy name and you are in full soul consciousness, then you have one desire, and that desire is to be with Krishna. Then you are with Krishna, because that name fulfills your desire. There's another way to explain that saying the name and being with the name is the same thing. Because the name itself gives what you ask for, but only under the condition that you have a pure soul and that you're in full consciousness. So Babaji repeats, in other words, it's not that the holy name has been emancipated with the Lord because it has equal potency, but the holy name is Krishna himself. In other words, it's not just that when I say Krishna, it means Krishna perfectly. He's saying that the word itself, the sound vibrations that come from the mouth or that vibrate in our hearts and minds, these are Krishna. And not only that, he goes on, Babaji, not only that, according to Srila Rupa Goswami, the holy name shows qualities like mercy even more than Krishna himself. And again, from the Puranas, he cites, O holy name, we know that you have appeared as the transcendental form of Krishna and as his holy name. But of the two, I consider the holy name to be more merciful. For if one offends the Lord, one can be delivered from the reaction by loudly calling out his name, and thus be immersed in an ocean of transcendental loving bliss. So the name is even better than God, even more merciful, because when you say it, something happens. When you're with Krishna, but nothing's happening. When you say the name, then energy is flowing, a vibration is coming, and mercy will come too. So the name, in a way, he's saying, is even better. Now, Babaji finishes on this point. He says, in this way, it is known that all the means and all the goals of human perfection lie in the holy name of Sri Krishna. The chanting of the holy name is the primary item, the angi, the body of devotional practice, and all the items are secondary, the anga, the limbs. So chanting is the main thing, everything else is secondary. And remembering this, the practicing devotee should chant the holy name with even more devotional attachment. In this way, they will become swiftly blessed. Okay, the final item that Raghunath says that we should request our mind to have love for is the loving couple itself. This is the most glorious task for our mind, and the one maybe we're most familiar with. And I believe myself that the one that's most natural for our hearts. We won't quite finish this commentary, but we will next time for sure. It's a promise. Babaji says this. Finally, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami says, and then he cites again the verse, O mind, take shelter of the incomparable, youthful, loving couple of Braj, Shri Shri Radha Krishna, and increase your wonderful love for them. Babaji explains, Srila Raghunath Das Goswami is an eternal associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, known as Tulasi Manjari or Rati Manjari. And he has descended along with the Lord to teach the aspiring devotees the intricacies of the worship of Radha and Krishna, thus taking them along into the Vraj Nikunj. So Raghunath appears in order to help us, in order to teach us. And very much like Chaitanya, he teaches through his actions. He has written some very beautiful poems and prayers, but what we learn about his actions are maybe the most moving and impressive. Babaji, the worship of the youthful couple of Raj as a manjari, as spiritual maidservant, is the unprecedented and most merciful gift of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Very important. Very important. I repeat. The worship of the youthful couple of Raj as a manjari. So for us as manjaris to worship the couple is much more important than worshipping anything else. That's the most merciful gift of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So why is this? We'll finish on this question. Why is that the case? Why is the manjari the most important of all? And why is it so important in our practice? Well, Chaitanya appears as a man in material form. But in spiritual consciousness, he appears as pure love. And what does pure love mean? What a strange thing to say. Pure love. It almost sounds like it's love where there are no people. It's so pure that there are no people to be there. And that's almost true. Pure love means the love that is felt in God, to God. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes as God, as Krishna. He appears in a material form, but he insists on humility, like we said before. He's not an opulent God. He's not a magnificent God. He's not an all-powerful God. He's a God of humility. He's a God of love, of softness, of kindness, of showing loving devotion. He says, I am not Krishna. Do not worship Krishna. Be a devotee to Krishna. And he says, I am not Radha. Do not worship Radha. Be a devotee of Radha. He appears as Krishna, but with the mood and the emotion and the emotional position, the loving position of Radha. He appears as the beloved.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Beautiful.
Jai Gurudev, Jai Gurudev.
I love you very much, my friend.
The love is flowing here too, dear Gurudev. So that will be our... Yes, please, Gurudev.
Could you explain that is the beauty?
Mm-hmm.
simple in words and understanding.
Mm.
Again, say to me, I want to listen again.
The question was, how can Chaitanya appear as pure love? And he appears as Krishna, but then he says, I'm a devotee. And he says, do not worship Krishna. He says, be a devotee of Krishna. Do not worship Radha, be a devotee of Radha, a servant of Radha. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not Krishna, not Radha, but he is the love that flows from Radha to Krishna. He is Krishna the beloved, Krishna the object, Krishna the male energy, receiving energy, and he is Radha the lover, the love giver, Radha the female energy, the generous energy. And what we are devoted to is their loving relation. What we are interested in is the love that flows between them. We learn that higher than Krishna, higher than Radha is the prem, is the love that flows between them. And this prem, this love that flows between them, can only be appreciated from one position, from the Manjari position, from the position of Manjari Bhav, because the Manjari is there to assist and to serve, but also to see. Radha and Mohan, they are inside this relation. They are absorbed by it. So the servants of Radha are there to help the exchange happen, but they're also there to appreciate it. And that is the position that we seek as bhaktas, the position of Manjari, so that we too can fully have darshan of the loving relation between Radha and Mohan. So the highest goal of bhakti is the mood of Manjari, the mood of observing, having darshan of the loving pastime of Radha and Mohan. Once we've understood that loving pastime, the way that love flows from the divine to the divine, we'll be able to understand it in every part of every day, of every moment of our lives. Because everything that appears in material reality is a tiny reflection of that transcendental reality of loving exchange. So now we stop here. Babaji will have some more comments, but we'll save these for next week.